kind of skip some of the logistical information that is covered in the tutor handbook and look more so at our goals as well as our approach to youth literacy support and looking at um, the different ways we try to provide student-centered reading and writing help, the ways we celebrate and amplify youth voice through the cultivation of reading and writing skills. And work with students who might not necessarily have writing on their mind, but ways in which we can develop positive relationships with them, as well as cultivating positive experiences with reading and writing, so that reading and writing aren't necessarily something that they see as negative or tedious or uncool or anything like that, but rather as something that can help them with school, that can help empower them later on as adults and even as youth, and the ways they can use their literacy skills to advocate for themselves or their communities. Um, Before we start, are there any questions that anybody might have? Oh, sorry. One more thing. Before we keep going, I want to let you know that we're recording for the sake of being able to play this tape for the volunteers who weren't able to attend tonight. I hope everybody's okay with that. Yeah. All right. Okay. No questions though. Anyone? You can raise a hand or no? Okay, great. So if everyone can pull up, well, you can either pull up your tutor handbook or I can share my page. I'll share my page, and it starts on page 7 of the tutor handbook, which is literacy support goals. So just gonna go over that really quick. I think what we're going to do is just kind of go over the information and we're going to stop every now and then to kind of give you an opportunity to reflect and maybe even ask a couple of questions that you have around your experience as a volunteer with RAWK. Um, so our main goal as an organization is to provide literacy support, particularly for students who don't have as much of it as they should or as they need or as anyone should have. Um, what we aim to do is to transform students' relationships with reading and writing, provide individualized attention and support, as well as partner with under-resourced schools and communities so that students can cultivate wonder, it can inspire their imagination, as well as their creativity in their spaces, in our spaces, our programs, but also as they just navigate through life so that they can have the ability to be creative as they're planning for their futures or trying to solve their problems. Giving them the opportunity to build their confidence and pride by having transformed relationships with reading and writing, so that they're having fun, they're reading about things that they want to read, and it's not a task for them that's being assigned by someone who's not doing it themselves. Um, that individualized support and attention, so that students can make greater leaps in learning, and because we'll be working with students online, probably over the next school year, we expect a lot of our students will get a lot of individualized attention and support. Um, again, partnering with schools, providing our services for free to those schools and who otherwise wouldn't have access to additional literacy support. We work with Lincoln Elementary right now, and we're looking to partner with Northeastern Elementary, both schools that have high percentage rates of free reduced lunches, which indicate just a high need of support. So essentially, all of our programs are intended to, like I said earlier, be student-centered based on their interests, but also fun and engaging, and in a way that they're able to explore their identities in the world around them, where they come from, their families, their communities, but also to improve their writing and reading skills in the process of doing so. This isn't an academic program. Students aren't being graded. We're not correcting spelling, grammar, or punctuation. Um, but what we are doing is we're looking to make sure that students are engaged in ways that are beneficial to them or in ways that will cultivate further engagement and joy with reading and writing. And so that we can celebrate and amplify their voice, honoring the words that they use, the, the way they speak um, about themselves, about their world, about their experiences, and to help them learn that they can gain the confidence that they need to be successful in reading and writing and literacy, um, as and then beyond. Um, any questions so far? No? Some of our kind of basic best practices, we'll go over a couple of more basic ones, but the ones that we always kind of go to are listed in this acronym, this RAWK here. So essentially, renewing creative freedom, always being safe and flexible, writing alongside each other, and then providing kind feedback. Renewing creative freedom in the sense meaning we let students write about whatever they want. Um, we do have a rule where we ask them, where we tell them that our publishers won't publish violence, and because we are always looking to publish our student work, students will have a tendency to write around that. We also tell them that violence is kind of an easy go-to kind of topic to write about, and because there's violence in cartoons, there's violence in the news, there's violence everywhere. We ask them to just be a little bit more creative than that. But essentially, again, giving them the room to want to write about whatever they want to write about in ways that challenge them, and in ways oftentimes that they don't think that they can, either because they were told that they shouldn't, or just they're I don't know they're not encouraged to do so. Providing a safe and flexible environment where they're able to explore the big questions that they might have. I know I get a lot of students who ask me questions about things that they're really, really interested in, but don't necessarily want to ask other adults, like their teachers or other adults at school. Um, we make it so that they can ask those questions. We try to answer them as honestly as possible, but also as authentically and appropriately. So, and whenever they want to write, if they want to write about something that we don't or that we're not writing about, we always give them the opportunity to do so. In that sense, being flexible to change, but also again making sure that we try to negotiate with them, because some students will try to negotiate in the sense that they so that they don't have to write. And what we want for them is to write, and we want them to challenge themselves. And so we find fun ways for them to do that. Writing alongside each other. We don't ask students to do things we wouldn't do ourselves. So when we're asking them to write, what we do is we write with them so that we show them what writing looks like. We show them that it's not something that adults just ask young people to do, but they don't want to do themselves. It's something that we enjoy. It's something that we think is important, and so that they will see that as well. And then kind feedback. Uh, we just give kind feedback about everything that they write. We understand that the work that they have just written. So it's not going to be perfect, but we're not focused on that. We're focused on what makes their writing successful, what's strong about their writing, as well as what we want to see more of. So anything that you find that you want to be able to praise, be sure to do that. The positive encouragement is something that a lot of our students don't necessarily get a lot of. And because we're not with them very often, or as much as we could be, or would like to be, we just want to fill that time with as much positivity and kindness as we can, so that the students can feel successful. A few helpful things. We have this model called the yes and model. So rather than saying no, but to kind of uh, rebut ideas that students might have, we say yes and. So we agree to what their ideas are, but we also ask them to elaborate, to expand, so that it is kind of like this process of continuous growth and continuous learning. Um, we ask a lot of questions, and open-ended questions where they can come up with the answers themselves, so that they can see the ways in which they can build something through their writing. And that writing isn't this thing that they're just doing to get to whatever point that their teacher asks them to get at, whatever that be a word count or a page count, but that it's something that they get to control in their own way, that in whatever way is meaningful for them. There are a few basics here. The first is to establish and build rapport and connections across difference. you're going to be different from the students that you're going to work with. You're going to be older than them. You're going to have different life experiences. These aren't necessarily things that will these are things that you can build a relationship off of. Telling them about yourself, having them tell you about who they are, and so understanding each other a little bit, understanding each other's experiences, understanding each other's interests, uh, doing a lot of this connection building, especially early on with a student, goes a long way in terms of making them feel comfortable with you, making them understand that you really are there just to help them write, and that you're not there to, or they're not going to get in trouble. You're not doing something together that you want to do. You're there to help them. Um, Also, provide positive encouragement. Um, it's not writing is not an easy thing to do. This is my daughter. Writing's not an easy thing to do, and we're gonna have to finish. But what we want is to encourage students positively so that they will have the willingness to grow and to develop the growth mindset that helps them understand that a lot of times it's effort that will help them achieve their goals rather than any kind of like innate strength or talent that they might have. And regardless of like how good someone is at something or how bad someone is at something, we want them to understand that you can always get better through hard work, and that desire to work harder they get by positive encouragement. We want to make it fun, or at least somewhat fun. Um, Homework or writing, again, especially when it's something that they feel uncomfortable with, and some of them just feel uncomfortable with writing in general. Uh, it can be boring for them, and they may not want to do it. And so a lot of times it's just a matter of having fun, and that might mean like being able to talk about other topics while they're writing, helping them be imaginative so that they know what's okay in terms of exploring their imagination, how far you can go. Teaching them about fun facts that might pertain to the things that they're writing about. Um, Anything that you think, I mean, that you remember, I think, as a youth that you think is fun, I'm sure they will find it fun as well. But also, let them talk to you about what they think is fun. And again, by seeing that as another opportunity to build the connections that you're going to need with them so that they feel comfortable, so that it's a positive engaging activity and experience, but that it's also not boring, and it's something that is based on what they want to do. Do a little bit of technical work, make a plan. A lot of times our students work best when they have a plan, when they know like the few steps that are ahead of them, the things that are expected of them, and what they need to accomplish in order to finish their project or their writing. Um, so ask them questions about what it is that they want to write, so they have an idea of all the different ways that they can go with their writing. So one example here is blue whales, right? And so it ask them what interests them about blue whales. Give them a certain type of a certain route to explore blue whales, whether it be diet or lifespan or the way in which or where they live. Um, and then so that they kind of have like a roadmap that they can follow for themselves. And again, it goes a long way because it makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. It lets them know what it is that they should be doing, and having a plan gives them an idea of where they're going to go. Um, Reading work aloud, have them read their work aloud. It helps with the language, and plus it allows them to see what changes they want to make without you necessarily having to explain it, which again gives them the opportunity to make those corrections on their own and to kind of and understand the importance of revision. Using the Socratic method to build independence. When they have a question, and it's oftentimes something that's more exploratory, answer it with another question, or allow them to see if they can't answer their questions themselves. So, if it's something that is more basic, like how to spell a specific word, ask them to spell it with you rather than spelling it for them. Or if it's like asking that, or if it's about some kind of fact that they want to research, whether it be some kind of math, help them find the answers to their questions rather than just answering it them, for them, so that they have an understanding of what that process is as well. Um, and then when possible, leave spelling last. I would say like those little micro revisions, whether it be spelling, grammar, punctuation, don't really worry about that. Again, what we're worried about is making sure that their voices, that their stories are being told and being heard. And regardless of like what spelling errors they may have, we don't necessarily think that's important. In fact, I think focusing on spelling and grammar and punctuation oftentimes will kind of hinder a student from wanting to write. So just focus on the story, focus on the words, the poems, rather than the little things. There will be some not so basic basics. Um, so if you see anyone whose safety is compromised, please communicate that with a staff member or someone in on site, whether it be someone in the school. Um, but again, if I think working online, that won't necessarily be too much of an issue. But if a student has a learning difference, again, feel free to ask us about it, take note of it, but always provide positive encouragement. And whatever the learning difference is, look for strengths and look for ways that you can praise them and help build their confidence, regardless of what kind of learning difference they're dealing with. If a student is an English language learner, this is a really, really good opportunity for some kind of like cultural relevance and cultural responsiveness work. So I know a lot of the English language students that I work with oftentimes will want to speak about their own language or will have questions about English. This is a really good time to kind of just have like those personal conversations about language and what makes them fun, what makes them special, and not necessarily something that might pose some kind of obstacle, right? But if language does kind of get to be too difficult, don't hesitate to take out your phone and look up Google Translate. We've been doing that a lot lately. It really helps. But in terms of being an English language learner, a lot of times it just helps to kind of not necessarily see that as something that is too much of a distraction in terms of getting them to write. Um, you know, I think it's much more important to try to find ways to connect and communicate um, with the shared language, whether it be the two of you like really speaking English only, or kind of going back and forth between the languages that you might understand together. Um, but a lot of times we also like to have bilingual tutors who can help, especially like if you're helping students from El Sol or Spanish speaking students. Um, but yeah, for the most part, try not to let the English language or the English learners feel like it's it's too much of an obstacle. And then students who get distracted easily, that just might mean that you will have to do a little bit more work outside of writing, building that relationship, or even like coming up with or altering your plans in terms of how much you expect it to get done that day. So if they get distracted easily, maybe not having longer activities, or having numerous short activities rather than one or two long activities. So maybe reading a few short posts or some poems before writing a few short writing pieces. Finding ways to kind of work around their distractions just really helps. If I know a lot of students are also very anxious or nervous, so some students might kind of jump around or move around a lot, or even um, like just be very fidgety. I think that's okay. Sometimes students just need to move. And if a student's fidgetiness is getting distracting for you, don't be afraid to just take a walk down the hallway. Sometimes we just need to get a little bit of energy out. And then ask them to write for about 5 minutes and see if they can, if taking a break won't help. And I think that goes around students moving around a lot. And if a student's being disruptive or disrespectful, and it's something that you don't necessarily feel comfortable handling, just ask one of the staff and they'll be able to deal with it. Or that often means also that they're just kind of calling out for help or just wanting to talk rather than to work. A lot of times what we do is we reframe student behavior. So if someone's being disruptive or disrespectful, we see that as them needing something that we would like to offer, and again, if it's just somebody to talk to, somebody to kind of let some steam off with, that's okay too. Um, but always kind of remind them that we are there to work, and if you do see an opening to get back to work and focus on the writing at hand or the reading at hand, always try to go back to that. It does help for them to go back to the work that they were doing to kind of resume kind of a sense of normalcy beyond whatever emotions are affecting their ability to work at that time. Um, so I'm going to stop there for a minute. We do have some reflection questions here, particularly about what our tutoring values mean to you, what tutoring tips you think might be helpful or that you would like to use, and any questions you might have. So I'm going to get back to our site to see people. Does anybody have any questions? I can see you all now. No? Are there any tutoring values that are particularly meaningful to you or maybe new to you? You don't have to respond either, or you can type it up, or you can just think about it. Any questions? Anyone?
I just want to say that I really appreciate that you work so hard to establish the rapport with the students to kind of meet them where they are, but don't tell them how to do it. Just, asking questions to help them figure out how to write about their blue whale is a great example, I think.
Yeah, a lot of our students, have distrust for education.
Yeah,
And a
yeah,
lot of times, education hasn't necessarily been developed in ways that include or were intended for a lot of the students that we work with. So giving them the space to establish a relationship that they feel comfortable with us does go a long way with making sure that they see their time with us as meaningful to them. Okay. So because we work with a lot of low income students, we know that they have, in some way or another, have experienced some kind of trauma, whether that be related to coming from an impoverished environment or just any other kind of experiences that might be tied to that. And what our approach is that regardless of whether or not we believe the student has experienced trauma, either ongoing or a one-time trauma, we noticed that it just helps to kind of take a trauma-informed approach to all of our students. It definitely helps in letting them know that they feel that they are accepted, that we're concerned about their safety and their well-being, and that's always at the forefront of our considerations for them, because we know that unless they feel safe, they're not going to be able to do something like write. Um, they're going to want to defend themselves or take care of themselves before they can do something like that. So we want to create an environment where they do feel safe, and where they don't feel like they can't be themselves or express themselves through writing. Um, Essentially, though, a lot of times what that tends to, what we use is this acronym HART, right? So hearing what the student is saying, empathizing with their situation, assessing what a student's needs are, referring to available resources, and then telling an appropriate RAWK staff member. Um, a lot of times we work with students who have just gone through a really, really long day, and they either haven't had enough um, attention or exercise, or maybe they had some problems with their friends, and maybe there's stuff going on at home that they can't really talk with anybody, but they just have to kind of still deal with that emotionally. One way to make a student feel comfortable is just hear what they're saying, regardless of what it is. If they want to talk about what's bothering them, hear them out. If they have something else in mind, hear them out. Um, Being heard, being listened to goes a long way with our students feeling like they're cared for. And again, it really doesn't matter what it is that they're saying, so long as it's being heard. They're being acknowledged, that their presence is being taken into account by somebody else. Empathizing with their situation, not necessarily trying to solve their problem for them, or telling them that it's going to get better or that you know how it feels, but just acknowledging that, like, what they're dealing with is really difficult, that they must be having a hard time with it. or not that they must be having a hard time with it, but it might be that it must be hard to deal with something like that, you know, so that their feelings are validated, and that they're not being told that to not feel what they're feeling, but to actually feel what they're feeling, so that they can kind of process through it, um, especially what their needs are. If a student has had such a bad day or is dealing with something that is so kind of um, consuming that during the time that you have, you're not actually going to get any writing done, that's fine. I've literally had students where they come in for a tutoring session and they can't focus because they need to sleep. Uh, so, we rest if they, we read a book. If they fall asleep because of that, then that's what happens. I wake them up when their session's over. Sometimes they haven't eaten, and so will eat something instead. Sometimes they just got yelled at by a teacher, and we'll talk about that, and that's how we'll spend our time. But knowing that we can try to figure out what's bothering them, and kind of, and that we can offer something that could help them at least process what they're dealing with. And then if it is kind of, if it is something that you need to refer to somebody, or offer some resources, feel free to do that. I've had students who have been hurt and they didn't want to tell anybody, because they thought they would get in trouble for getting hurt, and like, I would just take them to the office or find someone to help them. And then if something, let one of us know if this is something that you've experienced, just so that we have an understanding of kind of a better understanding of how we can better support our students on a more individual basis. Um, but yeah, being present and non-judgmental about what our students experience on a day-to-day basis, at home or at school or with their friends or with their family. We're not necessarily there to be counselors, or have all the answers, but just to kind of be someone to listen to. And then um, this is a good way to, again, develop this kind of trust that they will need to have with you, so that they can have uh, so that they can write. Sorry, my daughter is hungry. So that they can write, and in ways that are more meaningful for them. Let's see. We like to talk about secondary trauma, particularly for people who are working with students. I'm sorry, no, we're not there yet. Social trauma facts for educators. One out of four students attending in school have been exposed to a traumatic event, to a traumatic event that affects learning and behavior. And these effects can impact school performance, lower GPA, have health, or high rate of school absences, increased dropouts, or most such as expulsions, and a decreased reading ability. Essentially, making school not the environment at all that they want to be in. It can impair their learning. Um, Basically, just kind of taking too much space, mentally and emotionally and psychologically, for them to be able to concentrate and focus on remembering information or lessons in school. Um, it yeah, it just kind of has a very negative, and detrimental uh, cognitive effect on a student's ability to learn. And so that's something we definitely take into consideration. There's a lot of either physical, or emotional distress that students might have, so headaches, stomach aches, being very tired, having poor emotional control, inconsistent academic performance, impulsive or unpredictable behavior, overreacting to um, bells or sounds, physical contact, um, and maybe even having intense reactions to things that remind them of their traumas. So these are just things to kind of keep in mind, in the sense that if a student is acting up, or if there's something that is blocking your ability to help them write, it helps to understand that students might be just going through something, and that it's preventing them from thinking about the things that they should be thinking about when during schoolwork or during a tutoring session. So we have this kind of 5-step intervention, which builds off of that hard approach that we have, but essentially being aware of your surroundings, which again, it might be kind of weird in a online setting, but understanding that like if a student is having a tough time emotionally, it's being online and talking to someone online might not necessarily like be the most comforting thing, right? And so definitely giving them that space and letting them know that, or understanding that it's experiencing going through something that's emotional might be um, it might be made worse by being online, and so just being able to be supportive, be kind, um, hear them out, that will help. Staying calm and supportive, that will also help them kind of see what it's like to kind of deal with emotions. We're always calm. We will try to be calm. And so in that sense, it shows them it, it shows them that they're being listened to, and so essentially they will model that behavior as well later on um, when they are feeling overwhelmed. They can think about when they saw someone else during times of stress. Making outlines and plans. If students who experience trauma often need structure because it's nice. It's good for them to know what's coming up next. They don't like to be surprised. They like to know what to expect. And so having a plan, even if it's just for your session with them that day, this is what we're going to work on. We're going to read this book. We're going to write a few words, and then you're going to tell me about your favorite. And again, just so that they know what to expect. If you're feeling overwhelmed or unsure, about the experience that you've had with someone who you think might have been kind of just experiencing something like or who was experiencing trauma, uh, again, feel free to talk to one of us. We're happy to answer any questions you might have or do what you might need. Um, and again, if always just kind of refer to us and let us know if you experience something with a student that indicates that they've undergone some kind of trauma, that they experience trauma, just so that we know if there's anything that we might need to do, um, if we need to step in, or just again to further understand how we can provide more individualized support to our students. Let's see. Secondary trauma. It's really, really important for you all to understand that sometimes the trauma that our students experience and that we provide support for can oftentimes be traumatic for us. Um, uh, whether that be just feeling overwhelmingly sad sometimes about the circumstances of the student that you're working with, or being unable to kind of shape the thoughts that you're having around those experiences that you're having with them. So a few things that we like to advocate for in terms of like self-care in this sense is mindful isolation, being able to disconnect from whatever triggering interactions that you might have um, uh, based on that experience. So, you know, I, I don't know, for me, mindful isolation is just going out for a walk or just, being by myself for a little bit or even listening to music. Um, just so that like I'm not kind of overloading myself emotionally, having an ability to kind of disconnect and take myself away from all that. Having a community of people that you can talk to, people who can relate and identify with what you're dealing with, or just be empathetic, um, and who will allow you to process your feelings. Find ways to discharge that energy. I know that for me, it helps to run, helps to go for walks, but yeah, sometimes we hold that kind of secondary trauma physically in our bodies, and having a way to kind of burn it off always helps. And then treating yourself well, eating good food, getting rest, avoiding toxins, breathing deep, and then asking for help when if you find those other things aren't necessarily helping you the way you want to. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's hard to care for somebody and provide kind of caring experiences with somebody who's going through a lot, not to pick that up yourself. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Let's see. there's a list of scenarios here that we've actually experienced with our students, and so again, like while we kind of do more of like an online mentoring program, I think in the upcoming year, these are kind of experiences that you could look to have with the students. Um, I think it would be helpful for you to not necessarily like write reflections down, but just to read each example or each scenario, and to kind of think about what it is that you would do if you were in that situation. Um, Not that there are any right or wrong answers, but definitely like being able to refer to this tutoring handbook as well as our best practices and our not our basics and not so basic basics. And just kind of like thinking about maybe even putting yourself in the shoes of the students that we're working with and seeing how you might respond in those circumstances. But a lot of it kind of deals with distractions. A lot of it deals with like a lack of confidence, or even maybe being nervous. Um, let's see. We have. Um, I stopped sharing. Any questions so far? Any comments? Okay. Um, so because it took us a lot longer to get started, I know that you all probably expected to be done 6 minutes ago. These are kind of the sections that I really wanted to talk to you about in terms of the volunteer experience. These are the things that are really helpful to know when you go into working with students, especially some of the students that we work with who again don't feel comfortable with writing and don't feel comfortable writing strangers. How to make yourself not a stranger, how to make yourself someone that someone else feels comfortable writing with. Um, uh, One of the things that we, again, like I said, we like to write with our students. So getting comfortable writing with someone else on your part will always help. Um, and think about if you can read these scenarios, think about the best practices, think about again what works best for you, what's something that maybe you was new to you and that you would like you think might be helpful, and even think about your own experiences growing up and what it was like to read and write. To think about the moments that you enjoyed or the experiences that you enjoyed and what made those things enjoyable. Think about the experiences that were difficult and what made those experiences difficult, and see if those aren't things that you can't learn from or take with you in the experiences that you have with the specific work. The rest of the handbook kind of just goes into more logistics about tutoring, other experiences, the policies and procedures that we have, which I think you can kind of read through on your own. Um, yeah. Um, any questions? No? Okay.
Well,
Well, oh, go ahead.
no, we're good. You're doing a good job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just like kind of running through this information, and on top of that, I'm not. This is my first time doing a volunteer training online, so there's that learning curve for me as well. So I appreciate you all taking the time out to join us and going through this information. And again, I hope I didn't go through it too quickly, but I'm sure you'll be able to read through this information on your own. Please feel free to reach out and either to Kai or to myself with any questions you might have. Again, I think for the next school year, because of the limitations that the schools will have in terms of who will be able to go on and off campus, a lot of the work that we will be doing will be online, primarily providing one-on-one support with students that would range between 30 minutes to 45 minutes, and depending on how your student feels, maybe even working up to an hour, which I think would be a great accomplishment. But I think weekly is probably the way we're going to go about it. And if students find that they have extra time and volunteers are available to provide extra time in a week, might be even going up to like 2 sections a week, if that's, depending on where you're at and where you're at. Any other questions? Oh, one more thing that I wanted to talk about. One of the things I think we could use a little bit of information on is how comfortable you all are in terms of the online learning platforms that we use. For example, we're going to be on Moodle. If you need assistance with Moodle, please let us know. But also, if there are any other kinds of ideas that you, for me, I think what works best in terms of online work is keeping things simple. If you have any ideas or suggestions about your from your experiences working online that you think that we could implement in our programming, please feel free to offer those suggestions. We're always looking for ways to grow, especially with how we all have to work now. So anything you have to offer, we will really appreciate. Anything else? Okay. Well, again, I really, really appreciate you all being here. I appreciate you wanting to volunteer with RAWK, and our students work really, really well and make a